You could see me, but I cannot see you. Right. Hello, everybody. This is Debbie from Teacher Success Coach. Another episode of the Female Educators Roundtable, where I speak to other female educators from around the world who are teachers and also struggling. I'm not too sure if I could use the word struggling, also having some challenges, like, I am sometimes, and sharing their journey with us in terms of what it was like for them, just before COVID and then during COVID and now after COVID. What has that journey been like? And whether or not they've taken anything from the online platform, what are the triumphs and challenges they've experienced during COVID and now? And, what tips would they give to other educators, and what frustrates us in teaching, and how have we found any way of actually dealing with it? So welcome, Laurie. It's really lovely to have a fellow educator from the UK. So, we share the challenges also. Tell us a bit about yourself, where you teach, what you teach, and about your journey. Oh my goodness. Can you hear me?
Okay, so I'm Laurie. I can hear you. Yeah, can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Are we back? I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Excellent.
Yes, I can.
Excellent. Okay,
yes.
So
yes, I'm back. I can hear you. Can
excellent.
You hear? Yes, I am hearing you clearly.
Good. I can hear you. Right. So my name's Laurie. I am from Devon in southwest of England. I've been a teacher for 5 years. I'm a history teacher. I teach in secondary schools. And so far, since qualifying, I've taught exclusively in girls' grammar schools, which has been a really interesting experience. I wanted to be a teacher from the age of 16. I decided in A-levels, but I loved history and I was going to go into a profession where I would be able to share my passion for history and talk about it for up to 5 hours a day to a legally captive audience who were not allowed to leave my company and had to listen to what I had to say about history. And that sounded pretty good to me. I was under no illusion, but it would be a challenging profession, certainly on my PGCE course, and I'm sure that for many teachers it will ring true. But when you're training, you're with people who maybe are doing teaching because they're not really sure what else to do, and particularly potentially in more kind of vocationally lended subjects like history, for example, or RS philosophy. You tend to find people who fall in and go, I thought I'd see what teaching's like, and then they realize quite quickly that it's very, very difficult, and they either finish the course and then don't teach or drop out the course partway through. But I knew I wanted to teach. I knew it would be difficult. I myself, so I knew going into just to teaching, I prioritized especially of teaching, and I would really work hard on them to make sure that they were high quality, because I was banking on the fact that if I made them properly now, history is one of those subjects where luckily our source material doesn't change that often. And so I figured, well, if I make it properly the first time round, then I'm going to be able to reuse it with minor tweaking. Oh, are we there?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. It didn't cut out for me.
Okay, it's only cut out for me then. Okay.
Sorry, what was the last thing that I said? What did I get to?
PGCE, how some people in PGCE, you know, after they either taught or they actually left the course halfway through, or they didn't teach it through.
So for me, that was never an option because I totally knew that it was what I wanted to do. And I decided going into teaching that my first 2 years would just be really dedicated to teaching. I thought, well, you know, an A-level course is 2 years. Most GCSE courses are 2 years. By the time you finish your second year, you will have taught everything once and most things twice. So put the effort in, make strong resources. History is a subject where luckily the source material doesn't really change that often. And so I figured if I make it right first time, then I would reap the rewards later down the line. And I firmly believe that would have been the case if it had not been for the pandemic, which totally meant that everything I'd created now had to be readapted, remade. All activities that I'd lovingly crafted to be role play-ish and group work and active learning now had to be boiled back down to independent work that could be completed through a screen, and all of that took a huge amount of time. And then once we got back in the classroom, all the assessment cycles changed because we had tags and CAGs, and then we didn't have tags and CAGs, but we maybe had tags and CAGs, so we should probably accommodate the possibility that we might have tags and CAGs by shifting everyone else's assessment cycle. And it was totally exhausting. I have never been closer to leaving teaching than the autumn term of September 2020, 2020, I think, when we came back to the classroom after the first lockdown. And we were running around left, right, and centre with kids kind of cooped up in small areas, bubbles of year groups, where they were going absolutely stir crazy because they couldn't leave a vicinity, and it was insane. And I was so grateful when it started to lift. And then for some reason I decided that I wanted to take on more of a challenge, and the reason for that really is that I love teaching in grammar schools because I enjoy my subject so much, and there isn't the behaviour battle in a grammar school that you have in most comprehensive. And so I'm able to, for the most part, luckily, I'm in the very privileged position of actually being able to dedicate a significant amount of time in the classroom to my subject. And that's why I still am a teacher, is because of the circumstances I'm in. And there are 7 grammar schools in Devon. And that means that the head of department jobs in those grammar schools don't come up very often. So when one did, I thought I should probably apply for that. Not really expecting to get it, but thought it would be good experience all the same. And then they offered it to me. And so in my first year, I became a head of department in a girls' grammar school. And that kind of takes us to where we are now, which is, as you might be able to see on the screen, very, very tired. But I really do, you know, as we all do, I enjoy my job for the most part. There are things that I wish were different, but it's my passion, it's my calling, and that's why I still do it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Oh my goodness. So, you know, yes, I actually have taught in a private school. I taught in 2 private schools, and I told myself I'm not going to go back in there. Mm-hmm. Because I taught in the private school during the time of when we went back. I think it's 2020. Yes. And I told myself, no way, because I feel that a lot of parents have unrealistic expectations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't teach in a private school. I teach in a grammar school.
Okay, right. All right. So therefore there's the difference there. And so how big are your classes?
Up to 32. My biggest class is 32. Because that's how many tables there are in the classroom. I'm sure if they could get an extra one in, there'd be more. And then my smallest class is an A-level class of 6, but that's really just down to timetabling.
Okay. So you got a 6. All right. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So normally, what's the size of your normal A-level classes?
Well, this is only my first year, so it's difficult to tell. I have 1 A-level class of 15, and then I have 1 A-level class of 6. So it totally depends on what other options they've picked.
Okay. Because normally my A-level class is from 12 to 15. Sometimes I might have an 18. Okay, thank you. So what was it like? Were you still teaching in a grammar school when you were, during just on when you were teaching online?
Yes, yeah, I was. I've been in since my NQT job was in one grammar school, and then I've moved to a different grammar school since.
Okay. Okay, so you have not taught in quote unquote, mainstream schools.
No, not comprehensives, no.
Okay, okay. So, what is it like in terms of when you were teaching online? What was some of the challenges and some of the triumph of teaching online? What was it like for you teaching online?
Well, I did actually very much enjoy teaching online the first lockdown. It suited me because I'm quite technology literate, so I understood the platform quite quickly. And as a department, we kind of mobilized in the first few weeks very effectively and decided that we were going to go in guns blazing, set firm expectations of when we expected the work to be done by, and then the process that we would follow as a department if the work was not submitted. And then we stuck to that. And for I would say that initially we got maybe 50% of the work back, which was still pretty good. And then once the other 50% realized that, oh, actually we were going to check and we were going to email parents and follow through and actually look for the work, then another 40% turned in the work. And then it was just the last 10%. And that actually enabled us to kind of pick up the children who maybe didn't have access to computers or were having to share computers with family members, or just didn't have the facilities to complete the work at home. And we were able to kind of flag them to our central hub, as it were, and say, well, this person hasn't submitted any work and we haven't heard from them via email. Can you do a welfare check on them, sort of thing? So the nature of grammar schools, for all their controversies, does tend to be on balance more affluent families. And so for me, it was less stressful than I think I know a lot of my colleagues had it, because the families that tend to send their children to grammar schools, not all of them, but a large portion of them, can generally provide their children with a laptop and generally want their children to succeed very highly, sometimes too highly, but very highly in education. And so that became a priority for a lot of our parents as well. And so although it was hard work and it really was hard work to transfer everything over, because it was a different kind of demand, our kids became very panicky that they were going to miss out. They weren't going to get the education that they feel that they deserve, and they absolutely did deserve. And so it was a case of, okay, how do we make sure that these kids still have everything that they need and feel confident for whenever we come back that they haven't missed out on any learning, or as little learning as possible. And that's really the challenge in and out of online education in grammars, is how do you meet the expectations of the students, and how do you meet the academic thirst that they have. So it's different. It's I stand totally in awe of the comprehensive students, the disadvantaged, the pupil premium, the EAL students who many of my colleagues had much higher proportions, especially the SEND students, because again, because of the nature of the 11 plus and the qualifier, that means that you have to pass an assessment and an exam in order to enter the grammar school. Again, although we do have SEND students of all varieties across the spectrum, the percentages are lower than the average comprehensive. So, and actually for online teaching, for those students who did have, for example, visual impairments or hearing impairments, and even for those students who had ASD and kind of more emotional learning disorders, actually, for a lot of them, online learning suited them better because they were able to adapt the resources much more readily to suit them. If the PowerPoint wasn't a color that suited their visual needs, they could change it very quickly. If the text was too small on a worksheet, they could enlarge it very easily. And so for them, it worked a lot better. And you start to question, actually, okay, well, how do you make sure they still have that now that we're back, sort of thing? Because it really does, it's in some cases, it genuinely got to a point where I was going, am I a more effective teacher from behind a screen? Can I actually, in some ways, give the kids what they need more easily, in some cases, by being an electronic teacher rather than an in-person teacher? But then that, of course, negates a huge portion of our job, because I probably could be a more effective teacher in terms of resources, in terms of knowledge, but in terms of pastoral care, in terms of relationships, that was very difficult to maintain. So one of the things I did, which I think made a huge difference, is I set up a private Instagram page solely for my classes, and they had to request to join, and they had to verify their identity so that I knew that it was a closed environment, just full of staff and students of my school. And then I was able to interact with them on a more personal level, because I would do live Instagrams with them a couple of times a week, where I would go over the content and they would be able to ask me questions in the Instagram live, and I would post pictures of work that I'd received that I thought was excellent throughout the week. And we had like a little thing every day where I would put my snack up on my story, and they would tell me whether they thought it was delicious or disgusting. And that kind of that gave me a cause to kind of, when I was in the supermarket, to look for unusual snacks that I thought might cause controversy amongst the students. So that was great fun, actually. I really enjoyed that, and it was a really nice way to kind of remind them that I'm still a human, and that I know that they're still human, and to connect with them in a way that teenagers understand, which is, social media, I guess.
That's fantastic. That really is fantastic. So which means that when you were on the online platform, you had no challenges. Well, I had loads, because tech, I am not fantastic at tech, but I've actually were forced to actually become good at it. Because I had situation where when I actually did the Teams, I did not realize I'm supposed to be taking full control of the system. And students were taking off the PowerPoint while I was putting it on. They were taking it down. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? And I thought, oh, that's it. The nights, I stayed up all night to make sure I understood how to take control of the platform. So because I had the other group, the same group the next day, I muted all of them. And I said, Miss, you're muting us. And I keep on putting in chat, yes, I know. I am now controlling this platform. Because they were controlling it. I didn't know what to do, because although we were using Teams in the school, we were just using Teams for them to send us their work. And for us to put work up. So for me at that time, I'm thinking, really? So I had to sink or swim, and I couldn't sink, I had to swim. So YouTube was my tutor. And I really learned a lot on YouTube, because I, know how to put them in breakout room, and all of those things, because I was struggling the first time we went on. And I know that because at one time students were bringing their brothers and sisters on, everybody was coming, I had all kind of craziness happening. Unlike you in terms of, the fact that you taught in a grammar school, the attention was better, the willingness was better, the eagerness was better. I had students, when I logged on, I think, hold on, I'm speaking and no one is responding to me. And then later on I realized that some of them were not even there. They just logged on and they disappeared. It's just say goodbye. They were still there because they didn't know that the lesson was finished. So I had all those challenges. I had all of those challenges.
There were certainly students who were disengaged by online learning. I remember I had one student who would give me every excuse under the sun for why they couldn't do their work, why they wouldn't do their work, why the work wasn't there. I emailed their parents, no response, no nothing. So in the end, on a day where I was required to go into school anyway to supervise the key worker students and vulnerable students, I printed every PowerPoint and every worksheet, and I put it into a brown envelope, a pack, and I drove round to their house after work, and I knocked on the door and I delivered it to them, and I said, there is the work, you complete all of it, there is no excuse now. Because they just absolutely, they only lived around the corner from school. It was hardly a detour, and I was like, I'm just going to make this simple. I've done no photocopying for the last 3 months because I haven't had a photocopier, so I'm just going to print absolutely everything that they have missed, and then they will have no reason not to have done it.
Right. So did the student do the work?
No. They did some of it. They did some of it, but you know, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make it drink. You can provide all the but ultimately I'm not in their home. They have many siblings, and it's not an ideal learning environment for them. All I can do is know that I've done my absolute best to get them what they need in order to stay afloat. But then, as it happens, they didn't pick history for GCSE anyway, so so off they go. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you teach from years 7 upwards?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so which means when they get to year 10, it's a choice thing whether or not they want to, select it for GCSE or not. So they could drop it when they get to year 8 anyway.
Yeah, so in my current school, we have a 2-year Key Stage 3 and a 3-year GCSE course. And in my previous school, it was the other way around. We had 3 years Key Stage 3 and 2-year GCSE course.
Okay.
I taught both ways.
All right. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so now, thank you for that. So now that you have left COVID, because, you had to do the tag, the teacher says, whatever it was, we all had to do. Oh, I hated it because I'm back until as if, I felt so overwhelmed, as if the marking was coming out of my system. There was so much of it. So much of it. So what was it like when you actually know that you are going back into the physical environment full time? Before I get to that, did you guys have to, one of the things I had in one of my schools, the windows and doors had to open. The students were constantly cold. They were constantly off sick because they're constantly catching colds.
Yeah, absolutely. The windows and doors were open. The amount of extra mental load associated with teaching was just insane, and that's what almost drove me to quit in the end, because it was just so much you had to remember. It was, are all the kids definitely in that seating plan? Has anyone moved? Did anyone go to the bathroom at any particular point? Have you sanitized your hands before you hand out worksheets? Did you hand sanitize your hand after you took in the worksheets? If someone moves, do you remember it? We'd get emails sometimes. Once a child had been tested positive for COVID, you'd get an email saying in your lesson which students were in a 2-meter radius of that child, and you're going, oh my god, did anyone move? Did anyone sit elsewhere? And it was just the planning, because you could no longer rely on being able to pop to a photocopier because you were moving constantly. And so at the beginning of the week, we would plan all of our lessons and print out everything that we needed and put them into a little filofax thing with the different classes. And you'd have to go, right, how many in that class, how many in that class? And then if they weren't there, you'd have to remember to bring it next time, because they couldn't come and get it from you anymore. They weren't allowed into your section of the building because it was out of their bubble. And it was just a constant process of what's next, what else do I need to think of, have I done this, tick box, registers, all the rest of it. And it was exhausting. Really, that was the worst bit. The worst bit for me was coming back to the classroom and the initial hit the ground running, try and teach normally but not normally, and still being unable to do my normal lessons. But now not only were the lessons I'd created when I started teaching not viable because they included group work and shared resources, now the lessons I created for COVID also weren't viable because they were geared towards online and students having access to computers, which they no longer did. And so it was trying to find a third version of the same lesson to teach. It was just, that was a horrible time period. I really did not enjoy that at all.
Yeah. Because for us is, you walk in and you had to sanitize the table, sanitize the computer. I was just exhausted sanitizing after every lesson because the students were
Yeah,
coming to.
dry hands as
Yeah,
well from the hand sanitizer, cracked skin.
yeah. And it was constant, because as soon as you get in there before them, you sanitize the table, and then sometimes you have to do the chairs, and then when they leave, you have to do the same process again. I think I felt I was only sanitizing. That's all I was doing before I started teaching. And as you said, the paper, oh God, I found it really horrendous.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we were face to face, it was lovely because you were able to see the students, but it came with a lot of challenges.
Absolutely, yeah, I'd agree with that.
And when you actually came back fully without, another thing was the mask. How strict were you guys on terms of you guys wearing the mask?
We were really strict on it, and actually for me personally that was a really big challenge because I'm hearing impaired myself. So I've been hearing impaired since I was 5 years old, but I've always managed quite well with lip reading and kind of supplementing my hearing that way. Now with the masks on, I was totally deaf in many ways because I couldn't pinpoint where the voice was coming from, let alone what it was saying. And so I went to my local hospital and I had to have my hearing aids fitted for the first time in about 15 years or something like that. And I still wear them now because now that I've got them, it's very difficult to kind of revert to not having them. And so it was really difficult to kind of adjust to having to tell them, look, you have to speak loudly now because I cannot hear what you're saying. And they have, they're young children, they sit there and like, and you're like, what have you said? Who has said that? And especially for registers and attendants, once they're all sat there in their coats with their masks covering this much of their face, it's really difficult to tell who they are. And so if they're muttering the register, it's hard.
Yeah. I had that so much. I just find it was, and I didn't know what the students look like because when I got to that school, it was a new school for me. So, and the students were new, so I didn't even know what their face looked like because they were all wearing masks. When I eventually take off the mask, I think, oh my goodness, is this what you look like under the mask?
Yeah.
It was very challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, now that you've gone back, it's now quote unquote normal. How are things in terms of what have you taken from the online platform into your classroom? What is the behavior? Oh no, you don't have much of a behavior issue. But what have things been like in terms of the student mental and mental well-being, the mental and physical well-being? What have things been like now that we are quote unquote back to normal?
I'd say that the most noticeable thing really is the students' mental health. There seems to be a big gulf in, even though the behaviour is still better than most comprehensives, that there's a noticeable drop. The difference, it's almost like an immaturity. Our year sevens that we have now are children, and before they've been kind of, not by any means adults, but they've been respectful, they've been quiet, they've been engaged, and they've been like still. And now they are constantly on the move. They are chattering, they need to fidget. The amount, like, they just can't sit still is the thing, and they are constantly touching things and making noise, and like just they can't sit for any amount of time. It's like an anxiety manifesting in a lot of them. And our pastoral staff, our mental health cases have never been higher. The amount of students who are suffering with some form of anxiety and mood swings and just general low mood is so high. And unfortunately, we've also seen a kind of a drop in ability, as it were, because they've had that gap where they haven't had the natural progression of things, and also they've had such trauma for themselves as well that they don't necessarily progress in the way that we would expect them to. But the data and the expectations don't reflect that. We still have, you know, the same flight paths that we always had. We still have the same targets, the same expectations as teachers. We need to get them to this particular point, and particularly in a grammar school, because there's this very strange kind of contradictory expectation where, on the one hand, particularly the parents, but they want us to simultaneously achieve these top grades for their children, but without putting any pressure on them whatsoever. And so it's a very kind of difficult balancing game of going, well, I've got a spreadsheet that says that you're supposed to get a grade 8, and at the moment you're performing at a grade 4. So how does that happen, and why? So it's difficult to kind of reconcile that, and especially when, as a new head of department, with students who I only met in September, I've got management meetings where I've got senior leadership members and management going, well, who are your concerned students? Why are they concerned? What can you do to lift them above the progress line? And I'm going, I've got no idea. I've got absolutely no idea what I can do to fix this 3-year issue caused by a global pandemic in the span of 4 hours a fortnight. I don't know what I can do. I'm a human being.
Exactly. And it's like the automatic pressure put on you, isn't it? That because you're head of the department, you are supposed to know how to fix it.
Yeah.
Something that is out of your control anyway. You know,
and I'm supposed to fix it in my time, you know. It's the expectation that, oh, have you done a lunchtime catch-up session? No, I haven't done a lunchtime catch-up session because I'm legally entitled to a lunch break. Well, are you going to run after school sessions? And you know, in credit to our school, we're very fortunate that we qualified for some funding so that we can pay teachers to run after school sessions, but it's still, there's definitely a pressure. If I'd turn around and said I'm not running an after school session, I feel like that would have been an unacceptable option.
Although you know, that's it, isn't it? Because it's an unwritten expectation. That's the thing.
And it's justified by going, well, we're going to pay you for it. Okay, but I would rather have the hour.
Exactly.
I would rather and go home, and I would rather not have to, because it's not just the hour that you spend with them, it's the planning for what you're going to do, how you're going to best utilize that hour. It's the making the resources and gathering them and printing them, and it's all of the stuff outside of the extra hour a week that takes hold. And like you say, it is the expectation, but you're going to do it because you want what's best for your students. And we do, but at what cost?
That's it. I was just going to say, at what cost? You know, because you feel that there's sometimes, you know, even though I finish at 4, there's sometimes at 5 o'clock, I'm still saying, or 4:45, I'm thinking, okay, I need to leave now. And every day I keep on saying, I want to leave at 4 o'clock or 10 past 4, but sometimes 4:45, I'm leaving because I decided, you know what, I've had enough, I'm tired, I'm just leaving this. In the morning, I'm going to get it done when I come in early. And you're constantly preparing, marking. You know, that was the beauty of being online. You were within your environment. I loved online because it meant that, you know, I didn't have to go far, you know, which was quite nice. But at the same time, I was also conscious that I didn't know what my students look like because they were behind the screen and they were refusing to put the cameras on. You know, so it was a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now that you're back in the classroom, what have you taken away from the online space that you've actually now using in your classroom? Is there anything?
Yeah, I still use Teams. Teams has become a kind of core part of my teaching now, because when students miss lessons, I can put work on there for them so that they can access it in their own time. And it also forms a bit of a revision post for students who even were in the lessons. I can communicate with them pretty instantly by putting a message on there. If they've got an assessment, I can put all the details on there. And I use it especially, all homework now is pretty much set via Teams, because that has been a really big positive for me in terms of marking, because when you set a piece of homework, you have a certain expectation of what it's going to look like at the end. And so rather than hand marking all of that homework and handwriting pretty much the same comment on every single piece of work you get, because they've all successfully completed a table in significant detail, well done, you can now just copy and paste that same comment and make adjustments when need to give personalized but still relevant feedback.
Right. Okay. Hello?
Hello, I'm still
yes.
Here.
Yes, because I thought you were frozen because I couldn't. Thank you very much for that. It's interesting though, because I'm in a school now that we use class chat. So everything we put on is on class chat. They don't use Teams. They only use Teams when it was on the online space. But now it's everything on class chat. Yeah. So we set the homework and everything there, which is quite good, because it means that, in terms of the marking as well, is, those factors are quite good. Thank you for that. Another thing is, what frustrates you as a teacher?
The time. It's the constant time. It's marking. Written subjects, the expectation for written subjects is exactly the same as short answer arithmetic subjects, same assessment cycles, and the bottom line is that ours takes so much longer to mark, because we have to read everything and we have to read it to understand it. And when you get a good one, it's great, because you can read through it, tick, tick, tick. But even in that case, you need to identify to them why it's good and what they've done well. But it's the ones which aren't good, where you literally, a bad assessment can take 3 or 4 times as long to mark as a good assessment, because you have to pick up everything that they haven't done well and explain to them how they improve it and why they've slightly missed the mark. And I hate marking. It's the worst part of my job. I don't enjoy it, because it's so formulaic. It's not even really the student's own work, essentially, because it is, but it's taught to a formula. It's a loopholes, particularly for GCSE. Anything you're marking is, would this qualify as a good pass mark in an exam? And so it's not like you're reading your students' opinions, and it's not like you're reading their own personal take on history. You're checking to see that they've met the success criteria for an exam. And even when they do, you just read the same thing over and over again, and you write the same comments over and over again, and it's not inspiring, and it's not original or anything like that. So marking frustrates me. I wish that there was a way that it could be alleviated, and I don't know how. I don't think there's a way, but it can be, particularly for written subjects, because we as teachers have to know our students' strengths and weaknesses in terms of their writing. But that's what frustrates me, and just the amount of time that we're given is never enough to cover even the marking that we have to do, let alone the planning and the pastoral and the emails and the care and all of the other roles that we do as teachers. Marking is the thing that frustrates me the most. Oh, and lessons to include this, that, or the other, and you go, right, well, that's great for you to decide that on your 17 free periods a fortnight, where you've got lots of time to do that. But for those of us who are in the classroom for usually 4 periods a day at least, if not more, then when would you like us to sit down and change all our lessons? There's just never any time. Oh, are we still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. You kind of slightly broke up just now. It is so very true, because marking, I haven't found a teacher who said I love marking. No. Marking is my pain. I just keep on moving it from one pile to the next.
Yeah.
Because it's just so, it's as you say, you know, when you have, it's like I've got a pile to mark and they all seems to be the bad and they're just doing my head in. And I'm thinking, you know, I'm weaving through them to find a good one that I could be inspired, and then it's going to enable me to mark faster, but I'm still trying to find it. It's such, and as you say, you have to go through it so closely because you need to put comments so they know how to improve. And it's like specific comment because you want them to improve all across. It's just really, and you know, something you said, which is really fantastic. We're not marking originality. We are marking students' ability to program, to regurgitate, to rote learn. I had a group of students, it was year 10, no, year 11s. And I was teaching them psychology, and I gave them an exam paper to do, and then I marked it. I said to them, group mark. So exchange, and then I was reading out the answers from the mark scheme. And when one student read it out to me, I said to her, oh my goodness. She said, what is it, miss? Is it wrong? I said, no. I said, you have memorized that because everything you've written is exactly on the mark scheme. That I find so frightening because I said to them, when they get to university, that will be seen as plagiarized. Because that cannot be accepted. She said, but miss, I didn't copy you. No, I didn't copy. I said, no, you didn't. I said, because I gave it to you guys in the class to do, and I was walking around the class under exam pressure, so I know that you didn't copy. I said, but it's frightening that you remembered every single thing on the mark scheme. So there's no originality, just ability to copy and recall information exactly as needed for the exam. And it's kind of frightening because, you know, you're not marking originality, as you rightly say, you know, you're marking, have you met the criteria as it's set? And obviously that student met it because whatever she was reading out is exactly as the mark scheme I have in front of me. And that's quite frightening because when I look at that, I realize we are not preparing students for the world of work or the world out there, because we're preparing them the ability to remember and regurgitate the information with learning program. So it's quite worrying. What would you say that, what 3 tips would you give anybody who had the online platform, unlike us, feel concerned for the students, etc.? What 3 tips you would give them if at this stage they're feeling slightly overwhelmed?
Oh gosh, that's a really difficult one. I think lean on the online community of teachers. There's, you know, I have a teaching Twitter, although I'm not particularly active on it. But I do have a TikTok account and an Instagram where I see, and Facebook, of course, when I see teachers constantly wanting to help each other out. I see teachers asking for, does anyone have a lesson on this? And I see so many responses in the comments saying, yes, give me your email, I will send it across. So I think the most important tip is to rely on the community of teachers who are so generous with their resources. And I would say do that before you turn to TES and pay for a resource that you don't know the quality of. Turn to the communities of teachers who will be happy to help you out for the satisfaction of knowing that they have helped out a colleague. So that one massively. I would say utilize self-marking platforms for assessment where you can. As part of my assessment policy as head of department, although I can't, you know, totally move away from written assessments because I have to, that's the nature of my subject, I'm including self-marking multiple choice quizzes, which I can reuse year on year and will save me time and marking energy in the future. So using things like Microsoft Forms. And I would say talk to the kids as well, because it's, as much as, you know, we as teachers can be totally confused by technology, the kids understand it perfectly, and they will feel so happy to help you out and to show you. And if you ask them like, oh, what do you like using, oh, you like that, what can you show me, then they're going to be more engaged in the lessons, because they're going to feel like, oh, this is something I suggested and this is something that I like and I enjoy. So with technology, I think the best resource we have are the children in front of us, because they're the ones who probably understand it the most.
Yeah, thank you. I really like that one in terms of, utilizing the students, because as I say to them all the time, you guys, I'm not good at technology. They come and help me instead of telling me what to do, because I told them, so, and they really do feel really empowered when they actually have to come and help the teacher. As you rightly say, they feel they contributed to whatever resource that you're making for them. That's brilliant.
Well, it's a classic behavior policy, isn't it? When you've got a naughty kid, you give them something in a position of responsibility to do. You get them to hand the sheets out, or you get them to collect the glue sticks in, or give them the books to hand out or something. And because they now feel like they are relied upon and trusted, then they get into line a little bit more sometimes.
It is so true. That is so true, because even my year 13, one of them, because I know he fidgets, etc. I say, okay, we're doing a mind map. You stand there, and then they'll just send answers to you, and then you mark it. You write it on the whiteboard. So those things really does help. Oh Lord, Laurie, have I lost you? Oh yeah, there. Yes, that is really true. Right. Is there anything else you want to say before we say goodbye to our wonderful audience?
No, just hopefully my experience has resonated with some people. I know that it's not the most typical experience given the nature of the schools that I teach in, but hopefully it's just helpful for someone to hear similar problems. Hopefully something I've said will help another person, and mostly just thank you so much to you for talking to me today. And I think what you're doing is amazing, and the more voices that we as teachers have, then the better, really.
Yes. I do thank you so much for accepting the offer to come on. And, you've shared some really fantastic nuggets, because even, yes, the school you're teaching in, yes, it's slightly different, but we share the same challenges. The challenges are so real to us, and they're so similar. I could identify in terms of the frustration, in terms of the marking. Come on, we share that, because marking is not the most fantastic thing. I have 2 piles plus some essays, and I move them from one desk to the other, and from the one side of the other, thinking I have to tackle them tonight, because I need to give them feedback. So, we all share all of that. And thank you so very much for coming and sharing the experience. Greatly appreciated. So educators out there, you're not the only one. We are all struggling. Thank you very much, guys, for listening. Have a great evening, morning, night where you are. And I'll see you next week at the same time.